Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dietrich, and today we are test driving a 2025 Kia K5 GT line. And for some reason that I'm not 100% sure of, Kia decided to replace the 1.6-liter turbo four-cylinder engine that was in the K5 GT line last year with a 2.5-liter naturally aspirated engine. And on paper, this engine has a little bit more horsepower than the old 1.6-liter turbo, but in practice, it changed this car from one of the most engaging mid-size sedans to drive to one of the most forgettable. The chassis and the handling are still good on this car. I would say above average for the class. The steering feel is, you know, pretty much non-existent. No surprise there. But it just, without the torque of that Turbo 4, it's so boring to drive. Like, I realized I've been driving this car for 3 days and I hadn't yet formed an impression of it. So I took it on some twisty roads and I actually re-watched my test drive video of the 2024 model, because I did review a 2024, and I realized, okay, it does still drive well from a dynamic, you know, a handling perspective. It's still good, but the engine just makes it so much worse. Even the transmission, you know, I'm sure it's either a different transmission unit or more likely just tuned differently to work with this engine, or maybe geared differently. The transmission doesn't feel as responsive. The engine doesn't feel as responsive. The noise isn't quite as good. And this is a very rare instance of a automaker going from a small displacement turbocharged engine back up to a larger displacement naturally aspirated engine. Ordinarily, it goes the other way. You know, 2024 Toyota Tacoma went from a 3.5-liter V6 to a 2.4-liter four-cylinder turbo. The new Tundra went from a 5.7-liter V8 to a 3.3-liter twin-turbo V6, that kind of thing. And Kia did it the other way for the 2025 K5s, because the 1.6-liter turbo is not available at all anymore. You have to get the GT, the full-on GT model, if you want a turbo engine, and that gives you the 2.5-liter turbo with 290 horsepower and a different transmission, which is very fast and responsive and fun to drive. I've driven that powertrain in the Sonata N, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is still, for a daily driver, this is still fine. And if you're just, you know, if things like torque curve and I don't know, if that stuff doesn't really mean anything to you, then you'll be totally happy with this car. But to me, it really does feel like a downgrade from last year's model. And certain things in here are upgraded. They put kind of digital gauge cluster in here, even though it's LEDs instead of a full digital screen, but it still looks more modern than last year's. I like how they updated some of the controls and the touchscreens. I like the styling updates. There's definitely things to like about this car, and I did do a full review on it, so you can watch that. I'll put a link in the description in the comments. But from a driving perspective, it's worse. And it's all down to the engine. The engine, and then the transmission feels different too, but I don't know. I'm a little bit surprised that they made this decision. Perhaps this is the production costs are less on the 2.5-liter engine. I don't know. I have no idea why they did this, but it didn't help anything. I'm going to do a fuel economy test on it tonight. It'll be interesting to see what it does there. Maybe that will lend some clarity to this conundrum. I was trying to miss the bicyclist, and I hit the yellow line a little bit. It does handle well. It does handle well. The steering is numb, but on a twisty road, it's good. And the ride is fine. Like, it's not a super duper smooth ride, but it's certainly not uncomfortable by any stretch of the imagination. It's just that dang old motor. Dang old motor's a disappointment compared to last year's. I don't know why I regressed into some sort of a southern accent. But yeah. That's like 60 on a decent road. A little bit of tire noise, but pretty refined overall. A pretty refined cabin overall. I don't know. I keep saying I don't know, so I guess I'm just going to cut this video off because, yeah, this is one of the more perplexing decisions that an automaker has made recently. And Kia and Hyundai have been having a pretty high batting average, in my opinion. The cars are desirable, but it always seems like the weakest part of the package, for me, at least in the aggregate, is how they drive. They look nice, they have nice technology, the price is pretty attractive, but they don't drive as well as some of their key rivals, the Hondas, the Nissans, sometimes the Subarus of the world. You know, they don't quite have the dynamics that those automakers have. And I would say that last year, the K5 was a little bit of an exception to that rule. It really did. It was getting close to having those dynamics, but the change to this engine has regressed that considerably. So, I don't know. I'll put a link in the description to my fuel economy test as well, and you can check that out. And other than that, please like my video, drive safely, and have a great day. Bye-bye.